For Jews, this is a really important meal for all the family to get together. And this was a meal that Jesus shared just before his crucifixion, and he shared it with his closest friends. Seder is a Hebrew name for the Passover meal. On the plate, you can see 6 items. First, there are the bitter herbs, to remind people of the years of slavery under Pharaoh when life was hard. Then there's the haroset. This is my favorite, the apples and nuts and cinnamon and wine, to resemble the mortar that was used to cement the bricks when the Jews were enslaved. There is a vegetable, which alludes to the years of hard toil. And there's a boiled egg that reminds us of new life, and chocolate. There's a bit of lamb bone to remind us of the sacrifices of the lambs that were used to mark the doors so that the angel would pass over the homes. And we have some unleavened bread or a cracker, because the Jews did not have time to let the bread rise when they fled from Egypt. Now, if it's possible and you've got access to video, in the top right-hand corner, there's something called Speaker View. If you click on View and then click on Speaker View, well, I'm seeing Yvonne, which is a shame because I hoped you'd be showing me. Oh, but everybody else is seeing me, or some other people are seeing me. This is sometimes called a kippah and sometimes called a yarmulke. And you see, it's a little skull cap. This one came from Israel, and I got this when I went to the wall that we call the Western Wall, just outside where the temple used to be. Now, I'm not going to wear this one because it's small and falls off my head. So I've got this one that is bigger and tends to stay on my head. And I'm putting that on because when Jews worship God, when they go into the synagogue, and some of them all the time, the men will cover their heads with a hat. Now, if you brought a hat and you want to put it on, and it doesn't matter if it's boys or girls, you can put your hat on now. But if you haven't, that doesn't matter. I'm going to use a number of different names for a group of people this evening. I'll refer to the Jews and the Hebrews and the Israelites and the children of Israel. But all of these are different names, and they all refer to one group of people. The people today that we're most likely to call the Jews. Can we go to the second slide, please? Thank you. Passover is the great Jewish feast of redemption and liberation, the memorial of the Israelites' deliverance from their bondage in Egypt. The Jews marked their doorways with the blood of a lamb. The word Passover is about deliverance, because the story in Exodus is of the angel who passed over the houses of the children of Israel when they were in Egypt. And the next slide. Passover is also known as the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This is because in their haste to flee from Egypt, the people carried off their dough still unleavened. It hadn't risen. And they didn't have time to let the yeast rise in the bread because they had to go quickly. The lamb that's offered at each Passover meal is a sacrifice, and it recalls the blood that protected the Israelites from the angel. The next slide, please. For the Jews, the Passover is a festival of great rejoicing, which reveals how God led them from captivity to freedom, from sadness to joy, from mourning to feasting, from servitude, from slavery to redemption, and from darkness to light. This was a celebration that Jesus and his friends were coming to when they went to Jerusalem. This picture shows what it might have looked like when Jesus and his friends met together. Notice they're sitting on the floor or on cushions. Whoops, not on chairs. Wherever they are in the world, the Jews still celebrate the Passover, though today they might sit on chairs and sit around a table. We seem to be flicking through the slides a bit here. That's brilliant, yep. It's an important story in the life of the Jewish people, but it's a story which has meaning for everyone. It tells of the right of all people to be free. And the next one. In the Christian tradition, the Passover meal is also believed to be when Jesus instituted the Eucharist. Sometimes we call this communion, and sometimes we say the breaking of bread, and sometimes we say the Lord's Supper. It's all the same thing. Different churches might do it in slightly different ways, but all of them share with the bread and the wine, or the wafers and fruit juice. The central theme of the Passover is redemption. And here, if you can see, I'm just proving I have got 4 glasses. There's 2. And there's 4. Now, you may have 4 glasses, but you may just have 1 glass. Because the 4 glasses of wine represent the 4 freedoms that God has promised the Jews in Exodus. In addition, I've got a 5th glass, because tradition says there should always be a glass poured for Elijah, because one day they're expecting him to turn up again. Now, just in case your parents are a little bit concerned about me drinking 4 glasses of wine during the service, tell them I followed Paul's advice to Timothy. So it shouldn't be all bad. I haven't followed Paul's advice with the one for Elijah. So if he comes, he can have this at the end of the service. If he doesn't, I'll have to drink this one on my own. So the first glass. This remembers the promise where God says, I shall take you out. The second glass. This is where God promises, I shall rescue you. The third, I shall redeem you. And the fourth, I shall bring you. For us, the Passover means not only the exodus from Egypt, but our spiritual passing over from the bondage of sin as well. The aim of the Seder on this night is to bring the story of deliverance from Egypt into the present, so that each of us feels as though we personally have come out of bondage. Think about what it would be like to be a slave or a prisoner, and then suddenly to be set free. That is why this celebration is special. So let's prepare to drink the first cup. History teaches us that in varied ways and in different words, God gave promises to the people of Israel. With the cups of wine, we will recall each of them and say the words that I hope will come on the screen together. So if we could go to slide number 7. Now, there we are. Now, with your drink, you can drink it all if you've got 4 cups, or a little bit if you've only got 1. Say together, I am Yahweh. I will free you from the burdens which the Egyptians laid upon you. And all raise the glass. And slide 8. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has kept us in life, sustained us, and brought us to this season of joy. Now we drink the first glass. In the springtime each year, the season of rebirth and renewal, we read from the Song of Songs. This poetry of nature and love recalls for us the love between God and the people of Israel. See that winter is past and the rains are over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth. The season of glad songs has come. Now this is the time for you to do something. If you have got, if you have got some green herbs, some bitter herbs, now my advice is to take only a small bit, but you can take a big bit if you want. And with your salt water, dip your bitter herbs into the salt water. And could we have slide number 9? We'll say together, blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the earth. Now we eat the bitter herbs. Mm. 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 So that's not the nicest bit, but it's to remind us that there was a time when, in the history of the Jews, when life was really horrible. Now I have got a piece of flatbread. I'm going to break it. This is the bread of affliction. The poor bread, it's thin and it's not risen, it's not fluffy. This is the poor bread which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are in want share in the hope of Passover. There are 3 words that I will use in Hebrew, and Hebrew is the language of the Jews. The words are matzah, maror, and haraset. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth the bread from the earth. We praise you, who hallows our life with your commandments, and you who commanded us regarding the eating of the matzah and the maror. The matzah, the bread, or sometimes crackers, is used to recall the fact that the dough was used by the fleeing Israelites and they had no time to let it rise. The maror, that's the bitter herbs that we've just had. They symbolize the bitterness of the past suffering. And then there is the haraset. The haraset, there we go, is my favorite bit. It symbolizes the mortar that held the bricks together, but it's also the tastiest bit. According to the ancient custom, the maror and haraset are eaten between 2 pieces of bread. So, little bit of bitter herb on the bread. There we go. A little bit of herb on the bread. And then the haroset. Now, I'm going to put quite a lot of haroset on mine. And then we eat them, the bitterness and the sweetness together. Mm. Mm. I like the walnuts and the apple. I think that's lovely. You don't want to hear me munching. Now, if you've got some left, you can always eat it afterwards. In each of these elements, we see the symbols of our story. We see the bread of freedom, the bitterness of slavery, the haroset, the mortar of toil. For in the time of bondage, there is hope of redemption. And in time of freedom, there is remembrance of the time in slavery. Now, is George with us? I can't see everybody, so let me just see. Are you with us, George?
Why is this night different from every single night?
That's a good question. Do you have another question, George? I think we might have this on the slide, do we?
No, it's not on the slide.
It's not on the slide, sorry. Did you have the other questions, George?
Why do we eat flatbreads?
Okay. And the other questions?
Why did Jesus eat bitter herbs?
Oh, right. And there might be one more question.
Why do we dip herbs 2 times?
Right. Guys, thank you for those questions, George and Elia. That was really good. There are lots of questions to answer there. Let me try and begin to respond to them. Firstly, our history moves from slavery towards freedom. The Jews were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord freed them with his mighty hand. Had not the Lord delivered them from Egypt, the Jews would still be enslaved. You ask, what is the meaning of the unleavened bread? This one here, the flatbread. It's the bread of affliction when our ancestors took with them out of Egypt, that our ancestors took with them out of Egypt. For as it is written, they baked cakes with the dough which they had brought from Egypt, unleavened, because they had been driven out of Egypt with no time for dallying, and they had not provided themselves with food for the journey. And you ask, what's the meaning of the maror? Well, the maror is a bitter herb. It symbolizes the bitterness of past suffering, which our ancestors, the Jews, experienced in Egypt. As it is written, the Egyptians forced the children of Israel into slavery and made their lives unbearable with hard labor, work with clay and with brick, all kinds of work in the field. They forced on them every kind of labor. This part of the service ends with prayers of thanksgiving. We thank God that the Israelites were freed, but we remember that there are those in the world who are still unjustly imprisoned and enslaved. And now we go to the second cup of wine. We recall the second promise, the promise of liberation. On that day, you will explain to your children, this is because what God did for me when I came out of Egypt. It is not only our ancestors that God redeemed, but he's redeemed us along with them and all generations to come. Now, I'm not sure we've got the next words on the slide, so I'll have to read them. So we're bound to thank, praise, honor, bless, and adore him who brought us from slavery to freedom, from sorrow to joy, from mourning to feasting, from bondage to redemption, from darkness to light. We praise you, O God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. So let us drink the wine for the second time. Maybe next year we will be able to be together in a room where we can eat the meal together. And if we are, this will be the point where we share in a meal. We have a roast lamb and vegetables and potatoes. We can't do that tonight. But we can do what the Jews would do at the beginning of the meal. If you've got your hard-boiled egg, and here's my hard-boiled egg, take it and dip it in the salt water. The egg is symbolic of new growth, new hope, new life. And then, because we haven't had the lamb meal, this is coming a little bit quicker, we have the third cup of wine. After the meal, we would take the loaf of unleavened bread and pass it around. Now, I know that you will have worked out that this sounds like the thing that Jesus said. We read in Luke's Gospel, he took the bread which he'd given, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which will be given for you. Do this as a memorial of me." So if you have a bit of bread, this would be a time just to take a little bit of the bread, and you can eat the bread now on its own. And he did the same with the cup after supper. He said, "This cup is the new covenant, the new promise in my blood, which will be poured out for you." Here we see clearly the connection between the cup of Jesus' new promise and the final cup of our cedar, the cup of redemption. So for the fourth time, take your glass of wine or fruit juice and take a drink now. Now, I think we might have a little bit of Hebrew music in Hebrew and song in Hebrew. If we could go to that.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. בני ובאין, בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי, וביום השביעי, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Thank you. And if we could go to slide number 10, we're going to say the words on the screen together. But first, each person can think of something special that you'd like for the people that are beside you or somebody who's close to you, even if they're far away. And then think of something special for someone you don't know. Maybe people who are still prisoners or refugees or people who are enslaved. And let's say together then, the words that are on the screen: may the Lord bless us and keep us. May the Lord let his face shine up upon us and be gracious to us. May the Lord look upon us kindly and grant us his peace. Amen. Can I say thank you to Noah and thank you to George and Elia? And I noticed the clapping and the joy in the singing. So well done for that, you guys. I hope that has introduced a little bit about the Passover for us. And maybe next time we do it, we'll do it sitting together and having a full meal together. Thank you.